Hi. So I wanted to start this off with a bit of a flashback because this is kind of important. So during Nintendo's annual investors meeting back in 2014, there was a investor that had a particular statement because he felt a certain way about the day-to-day operations, and during the investors meetings, people talking about video games or whatever. He wanted to express his irritation with that, and he basically wanted to focus on more of the financial aspect, because that's what investors are there for. The investors might not be gamers, they might not be people that are interested in video games, but they notice that the dividends that the company is providing is substantial enough to want to invest in that company. So being out of touch and being an investor, you're going to be focused more on what that company is doing for you financially, more so than the day-to-day operations, whatever. And that's fine. That's something that happens. It's perfectly fine. So this investor said, "I do not understand video games and I feel angry because at Nintendo shareholder meetings, the shareholders often discuss things relating to video games such as childish topics. What are the future of video games and what should they be?" While I, for one, was flabbergasted that Mr. Iwata continues to hold position, although he had said he would resign if the company performances were bad. I hope that Nintendo shareholders meeting will become an opportunity where the shareholders discuss the company's business operations from the viewpoints of capital gain and dividends, the investor added, but don't worry, Nintendo executives were quick to fire back, with Ginyo Takeda and Tatsumi Kimishima replying. Takeda says, "I appreciate your tough comment. We, the directors of the company, feel that we should take responsibility while recovering our business momentum. I would like to ask Mr. Kimishima to comment on this valuable opinion from one of the Nintendo shareholders." Kimishima states, "The annual general meeting of shareholders is an important opportunity for communication between Nintendo shareholders and the company's management team. This is a place where we respond to the views expressed by the shareholders in order to discuss how we should develop the company from now on." Per that perspective, talking about the company's business operations is important, and at the same time, as an entertainment company, it is also very important for us to inform the shareholders about the kinds of entertainment that Nintendo offers, including video game content. Therefore, as the shareholders have just commented, we are, and we will, try to thoroughly discuss our business operations, and we will continue to respond to questions from other shareholders regarding the kinds of entertainment we are challenging ourselves to offer. We will try to further enhance the annual general meeting of shareholders from now on. We appreciate your continued support of the company. Now, what that was a nice way of saying is that if we don't talk about the business and talk about where the future of the business is headed, we are going to be woefully underperforming because we don't understand where the curve is headed. You have to be ahead of the curve on these things. In order to do things like that, you kind of have to have that conversation of where gaming is going, or what types of trends are at play, or what things are around the corner that could be taken advantage of or utilized in the future consoles. So yes, in the instance of that, had they got rid of Iwata because of the bad performance, I'm sure that would have made the investor happy, but it probably wouldn't have worked out for Nintendo in the long run, considering just after that, Iwata was hard at work trying to put the finishing touches on what would become the Nintendo Switch. And that actually did very well for the company and provided a lot of dividends to the investors. This is why it pays to kind of have a finger on the pulse of what's going on here. But again, I only brought this up because it's important to note that there's going to be a lot of people in the higher ends in the investment class and in the upper management that are going to be completely out of touch with what the consumers want, where the industry is headed, and things like that. They're only interested in line go up thinking. It's not necessarily wanting to improve or make better experiences for people. It's basically just wanting to make as much money as possible. And that leads to some really weird outcomes. So I told you that story to tell you this one. EA execs believe that RPG fans would swallow any slop. Former Dragon Age lead writer David Geider has confirmed what RPG fans have suspected and memed about for years. EA executives believed that they could shovel out half-baked, buggy, uninspired games and RPG fans would line up anyway because, well, it's an RPG. In case anyone harbored illusions about how AAA game executives view their customers, David Geider is here to set the record straight. In a recent PC Gamer interview, the former BioWare lead writer bluntly revealed that EA leadership believed that RPG fans were essentially the gaming equivalent of hungry cave goblins. Always desperate, always showing up, no matter how awful the food being tossed down. According to Geider, the suits upstairs assumed that the nerds in the cave would reliably buy up anything stamped with RPG, so there was no real need to respect or innovate for them. And that's something that you tend to notice. They got so high off their own supply that they thought that people are just going to be all right with whatever you put out. The diehard core audience will always be there. They'll always put up with our shit because all we do is just kind of spit out the same thing over and over again with different results. And then they decide that they're going to reach out for new audiences. They're going to go and put out these weird aspects just to cater to audiences that aren't really interested in or don't really give a shit about this franchise. And then once they do that, it turns off the core base. The core base goes somewhere else, and then they're struggling to find a new balance between whatever's left of the core audience and this new audience that came in that just wants the same of the thing that you changed it to without respecting what came before. So, and this is something that Guilty Gear is going through, where people that have enjoyed Guilty Gear from Missing Link to Zerd or Revelator, they want the old Guilty Gear, or they want all the aspects of Guilty Gear that have existed up to that point. And they are pretty much getting shafted on that because Strive went in an entirely different direction to cater to a whole new audience. But that new audience that you brought in is a bunch of insufferable tryhards that are only focused on trend of the week, which tends to be LGBTQ content. And now those players, the however many millions of players that you've acquired thanks to Game Pass, don't amount to a bit of dick. This would explain a lot, wouldn't it? The rushed sequelization, the narrative-like blind service misfires, the shallow character systems dressed up in expensive cinematic packaging. None of it is surprising when you realize their corporate thinking was just slap RPG on it and they'll come. Geider even recalls how internal pushes to maintain classic RPG elements were seen as insular and a barrier to reaching the almighty broader audiences. See, there you go. It's a strategy that shockingly often resulted in alienating the very fans who kept the genre alive. And that's exactly what I was talking about in those examples I put up. Chasing after this modern audience has been nothing but detrimental to the brands that are established and basically has torched so many different properties to the point of where I don't know if you can really recover. The dry irony here is that RPG fans have been loudly aware of this dynamic for over a decade, from Bethesda bugs to Ubisoft copy-paste open worlds. The idea that major studios shovel out mediocrity because they assume the fans will lap it up has practically become a genre trope into itself. Geider's admission simply puts into corporate words what gamers have already tattooed on their brains through painful experience. Let's take a look at the PC Gamer article real quick. I want to check something real quick before we finish this. So with EA bosses convinced that the Nerd Cave would spell out its denizens to any game with BioWare on the box, their philosophy became that you didn't have to try and appeal to them. You had to worry about the people who weren't even in the cave, which were the audience we actually wanted, which was much larger, which is how you ended up with the decidedly more actiony and slick cinematic focus of games like Mass Effect 2, 3, and Andromeda, as well as Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, and hey, maybe Veligard as well. Gone were the crunchy stats and behind-the-scenes dice rolls from BioWare of yore. This was the era of spectacle, and to be fair for the executives just for a second, some of those games were bangers. BioWare did thread the needle on at least a few of them. So they're basically stating that this was a success till it wasn't a success. You can only do certain things like this so many times before people get wise to it. Or the flashiness of the series can only be exciting until you realize that a lot of the more technical aspects are being just kind of pushed off to the side or shelved in order to make way for more cinematic flashiness. It's like I said, it works until it doesn't. And then when it doesn't, they're just going to keep going in on that without understanding that people might want to return to form. But Geider wasn't thrilled as things were increasingly pushed in that direction and away from BioWare's roots. I was always trying to push it to our traditional mechanics, he says, and that wasn't very welcome in the EA sphere. Geider left BioWare in 2016, first heading to Beamdog, Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition fame, into his own studio at Summerfall, currently working on an unholy roguelike deck builder. That meant he dodged a release of what might be the ultimate expression of EA's action-obsessed executive philosophy, Anthem, which was not a good game. Not even the Nerd Cave turned out for that one. I feel like this need to cater to expanded audiences and just kind of shelve the traditional audience because we think that they're always going to be there for it. I think that's a delicate balancing act that if you screw it up, you screw it up royally. So there are ways to actually do this. You can do spin-offs like the Persona series, which was a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei. You could create a whole new series that kind of go in that direction of that expanded audience, but trying to take something that already exists and trying to bend it and twist it into something that's going to appeal to modern audiences is just not going to work in the long run. Oh, it'll work for a little while because it's actually bringing in a bunch of people, but then when you scare off your core audience, you're going to be working your ass off trying to get them back through various means. Now, going back to Nintendo, this is something that happened with the Wii, I think right around the beginning of the Wii, when they were focusing on the lifestyle device aspect of it and catering to a lot of older people that were interested in the Wii for Wii Sports and things like that. They liked Wii Sports until they didn't. They were focused on Wii Sports for the just the novelty aspect of it. And like my former boss of mine, when I worked on base as a graphic designer, she was very big on the Wii. She liked the Wii Sports. She liked just the fun aspect of that. And then she basically said it sat on her entertainment center. It just made flashing lights at her. The core fan base was jilted due to the push for the modern audience or the expanded audience. And the core audience kind of went off and did other things. When the Wii U came out, not too many people purchased the Wii U. And I think it was less about the naming conventions, honestly, and more about just the fact that there's an abundance of shovelware and that catering to the expanded audience might not have been the best move for Nintendo in that way. So during the Switch release, they focused on getting as much games as possible. And even in the Wii U, they tried to win back that hardcore base with things like Bayonetta 2, and a few other games. It worked out better for the Switch than anything else, honestly. So there's a way to win back your core audience, but it's going to take you a long time to do it. Maybe the better idea is to create a sister series, create a spin-off series that does things that caters to that audience, but maybe use that as a gateway drug to get people into the main series where you are still catering to those devoted core fan bases. I don't know. Anyways, thank you for joining me for this. See you next boss fight. Take care.